She stood there, in the middle of the grand hall, her heart shattered into pieces. Her white gown, once symbolizing a new beginning, now felt like a cruel joke. Emma Taylor had been left at the altar, abandoned by the one person she thought would always be there. The guests, once cheerful, now stared at her with pity as she stood frozen, unable to move. Her mind raced, heart pounding, but all she could do was stare at the empty space where her fiancé had stood moments ago. He was gone. Just like that, her dreams of a perfect future vanished in thin air. But then, a voice broke through the silence. "You shouldn't be standing here alone." Emma turned, her eyes red and swollen. Standing behind her was a man she didn't recognize, tall, confident, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit. His presence felt like a shield from the chaos around her. "Are you all right?" he asked softly, concern written across his features. She nodded, though she wasn't sure if she was telling the truth. Everything felt like a blur. "You don't look all right," he said, his tone warm yet firm. "Let me take you somewhere, Emma. Somewhere you don't have to face this." His name was Dr. Alexander Moore, a man she had never met, yet somehow, he was the one offering her comfort when no one else could. "Thank you," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. She didn't know why she said it. She didn't know why she trusted him, but in that moment, she had no choice. "Let's go," he said, his voice steady as he guided her away from the broken remnants of what should have been the happiest day of her life. The outside world felt like a distant memory, the weight of the day pressing down on her shoulders. But in Alexander's presence, there was a strange sense of calm. He didn't ask her questions. He didn't press her for answers. He simply led her to his car, and they drove away in silence. Emma had no idea where they were going or why she was going with him. But somehow, the fact that he was there, offering a quiet refuge, was enough. She wasn't sure what would happen next, but one thing was certain. Her life was about to change, and she couldn't even begin to imagine how. The car ride was quiet, the hum of the engine and the occasional flicker of streetlights outside the window, the only sounds filling the space between them. Emma sat with her hands clasped tightly in her lap, still reeling from the events of the evening. She didn't know where Dr. Alexander Moore was taking her, but part of her felt relief in the silence. The weight of the wedding day, her wedding day, was pressing down on her like a stone. Her mind kept replaying the moment when she stood alone, surrounded by guests, her fiancé gone. It felt like a dream. No, a nightmare. She had never expected anything like this. "Where are we going?" Emma asked, her voice trembling slightly. Dr. Moore glanced over at her, his eyes calm, but his expression unreadable. "Somewhere safe," he said simply. The answer was vague, but for some reason, Emma didn't feel the need to question it. Maybe it was the way he spoke, so sure of himself, so steady. Or maybe it was just that she was too exhausted to care. As they drove, the city lights blurred past them, a quiet reminder of the world she had just been a part of. But here, in this car with a stranger, everything felt different. He wasn't the first person to offer her help tonight, but somehow, his offer felt different. He wasn't offering sympathy or empty words. He was offering something she didn't know she needed: peace. After a long while, the car turned down a quiet street, the lights dimming as they neared a large building. Emma's curiosity piqued, and she glanced over at him. "Where are we?" she asked, her voice soft. Dr. Moore slowed the car and parked in front of an elegant building, the soft glow of lights from the windows casting a warm, welcoming glow. It looked like a mansion, the kind of place she'd only ever seen in movies. "This is where I live," he said, getting out of the car. Emma followed his lead, her heart still racing, but now with a different kind of anxiety. She wasn't sure what to expect. A mansion? It seemed so far removed from everything she had known. Her apartment was small, barely enough space for the dreams she carried. The idea of being in a place like this, with someone she hardly knew, felt surreal. "Are you sure this is okay?" she asked, hesitating at the entrance. "Of course," he said, looking at her with reassuring eyes. "You're safe here. Come in." Slowly, she stepped inside, and the warmth of the house enveloped her. The interior was just as grand as the outside, with high ceilings, soft lighting, and elegant furniture. It felt like she had stepped into another world, a world so different from the one she knew. Dr. Moore led her to a cozy sitting area by a fireplace, the crackling flames offering a soft comfort. He motioned for her to sit, and she did, still unsure of what to expect. "You're probably wondering why I brought you here," he said after a long pause. Emma nodded, finally finding her voice. I don't know what to think." He smiled gently, as if he understood exactly what she meant. "I know this is a lot, but I want to help. You've been through a lot tonight. I couldn't just leave you there." His words were simple, but they carried weight. He wasn't just offering her a place to stay. He was offering her a sense of security, something she hadn't felt in a long time. "Thank you," she whispered, the words feeling inadequate, but they were all she had. "You don't have to thank me," he said, sitting down across from her. "I just want you to feel safe." The fire crackled softly in the background, and for the first time that night, Emma felt a flicker of calm in her chest. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for now, she was here, in this strange yet welcoming place, with someone who, despite being a stranger, seemed to understand her better than anyone else had in a long time. The next morning, Emma woke up in a room that was far from anything she had ever imagined. The soft light streaming through the tall windows painted the room in a warm glow, the furniture elegant yet comfortable. She stretched, feeling a sense of calm she hadn't had in a long time. The events of the previous night were still fresh in her mind, but they didn't seem as overwhelming now. The quiet peace of the room soothed her, and for the first time since she had been left at the altar, she felt like she could breathe again. As she sat up, a soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, and Dr. Moore stepped inside, holding a tray with breakfast. His smile was gentle, and there was a quiet understanding in his eyes that made her feel seen. "Good morning," he said, setting the tray down on the small table beside the bed. "I thought you might be hungry." Emma looked at the tray, surprised by the gesture. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice still a little hoarse. "You don't have to thank me," he replied, his tone calm but sincere. "I just thought it would be nice to start your day with something peaceful." She smiled faintly, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. It had been a long time since anyone had taken care of her like this. As she picked up the fork and took a bite, she noticed how different everything felt. Last night, she had been in shock, unsure of where her life was headed, but now, in this moment, it felt like she had some control again. After a few moments of quiet, she set the fork down and looked up at him. "I didn't expect any of this," she admitted. "I didn't expect to wake up here, or for someone to be so kind to me." Dr. Moore met her gaze, his expression serious but kind. "You don't need to explain," he said softly. "You've been through a lot. I know this is sudden, but I wanted to make sure you were okay." Emma swallowed, trying to push down the lump in her throat. She wasn't used to kindness, not like this. "I'm not sure what to do now," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've never been in a situation like this before." Dr. Moore sat down across from her, his eyes thoughtful. "It's okay to not know," he said. "You've had your world turned upside down, and it's going to take time to process everything." His words were simple, but there was something in his voice that made her feel less alone. "But you're not alone," he continued. "I'm here to help, if you want that. I can't make everything go back to the way it was, but I can offer you a fresh start. A chance to rebuild, if that's what you want." Emma felt a flicker of hope stir within her. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, it didn't seem as frightening. "I think I need that," she said softly, looking at him with a newfound sense of clarity. "A fresh start." He smiled, and for a moment, Emma saw a glimpse of the man behind the calm exterior. He was more than just a doctor. He was someone who understood what it was like to be lost, to need help, even if he didn't show it. "Then we'll make sure you get it," he said. "But for now, take it one step at a time." Emma nodded, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. It wouldn't be easy, and there was still so much she didn't understand, but in this moment, she was no longer standing alone in the dark. She had someone to walk with her, and that was enough for now. The days passed quietly, and Emma found herself settling into a routine she never expected. Dr. Moore, or Alexander as he had insisted she call him, continued to offer her the kind of kindness she had only read about in books. He didn't ask for anything in return, only that she take time for herself, to heal and to think. It felt strange to be given such freedom, yet it was exactly what she needed. Each morning, she would wake up in the spacious guest room, the sun filtering in through the sheer curtains, and she would remember where she was. No longer in her cramped apartment, no longer alone, but here, in a house that seemed to offer a chance at something new. As the days grew into weeks, Emma began to take walks around the estate, exploring the large garden in the back, where she could lose herself in the rows of flowers and the quiet hum of nature. There was something soothing about the greenery, the way the wind would gently rustle the leaves in the trees. It was a world away from the noise and chaos of her past. One afternoon, as she walked along the garden path, she heard the sound of footsteps behind her. Turning, she found Alexander walking toward her, his hands tucked into the pockets of his jacket. "I was wondering where you'd gone," he said with a small smile. Emma shrugged, a slight smile tugging at her lips. "Just needed some fresh air," she said. "It's peaceful here." "I'm glad you think so," he replied. They walked together in silence for a while, each of them lost in their thoughts. Finally, Emma spoke, breaking the stillness. "I've been thinking about what you said, about starting fresh, about rebuilding." Alexander looked at her, his gaze steady. "And?" he asked. "I think I want to try," she said, her voice softer than usual. "I don't know where to begin, but I feel like I have the chance to do something more with my life. Something that actually makes me happy." Alexander smiled, and for the first time, Emma saw the genuine warmth in his expression, the kind of smile that reached his eyes. "That's a good place to start," he said quietly. "You don't have to have it all figured out right now, but taking that first step is important." His words hung in the air, and Emma felt something shift within her. It wasn't just about a new career or a new life. It was about finding the courage to move forward, even when the past was still tugging at her heart. As they continued to walk, Emma's thoughts began to clear. She didn't have to know the exact path ahead, but she was ready to take that first step. The weight she had carried for so long seemed a little lighter, and for the first time since the wedding fiasco, she felt a flicker of hope. When they reached the edge of the garden, Alexander turned to her. "I know things haven't been easy, but I'm glad you're here, Emma, and I'm glad you're starting to see what's possible." Emma met his gaze, her heart swelling with gratitude. She wasn't sure where her journey would take her, but she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't alone anymore. And that, in itself, felt like a new beginning. As the weeks went by, Emma began to find herself again. She took up painting once more, something she had abandoned years ago when life became too busy and complicated. Each morning, after her walk in the garden, she would retreat to a small studio in one corner of the mansion that Alexander had set up for her. It was filled with light, with large windows that offered a breathtaking view of the estate's sprawling grounds. The silence in the room was soothing, and for the first time in a long time, she felt like she could breathe without the weight of the past pressing down on her. It was as though the paintbrush had the power to free her from the chains that had once bound her, allowing her to express herself in ways words never could. One afternoon, while Emma was lost in her art, she heard the soft sound of footsteps approaching. She looked up to see Alexander standing in the doorway, a small smile on his face. "How's it going?" he asked gently, stepping into the room. "Good," Emma replied, her voice soft but filled with a sense of contentment she hadn't felt in years. "I've missed this, painting. It feels like it's a part of me that I forgot about." Alexander nodded, understanding. "I'm glad you're doing something for yourself. You deserve it." There was something different in the way he said it, something that made Emma pause. She set down her paintbrush and turned to face him fully. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "I never thought I would get here, After everything that happened. I didn't think I'd ever feel like myself again." Alexander's expression softened as he crossed the room to stand beside her. "You've been through a lot," he said quietly, "but you're stronger than you realize. You're finding your way back, piece by piece." Emma felt a lump form in her throat as his words settled in. She wasn't sure why, but in that moment, she felt something shift inside her. For so long, she had been carrying the weight of disappointment, heartache, and failure. But now, as she stood here in this quiet studio with Alexander, she felt as though a new chapter was beginning to unfold. She had always believed that she had to do everything on her own, that asking for help was a sign of weakness. But now, for the first time, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to do everything alone. "I'm not sure what the future holds," Emma said softly, her voice full of vulnerability. "But I'm starting to think that maybe it's okay to let go of the past and move forward." Alexander looked at her, his eyes full of warmth and something else she couldn't quite place. "It's more than okay," he said gently. It's the only way to truly heal. Emma took a deep breath, her heart swelling with a mix of emotions she couldn't quite put into words. She wasn't sure if she was ready for what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid. She had found a small corner of peace in her chaotic world, and with Alexander's quiet support, she felt like she could begin again. As the evening sun dipped low, casting a golden glow over the studio, Emma picked up her paintbrush once more, her heart lighter than it had been in months. She wasn't alone anymore, and that was enough to make her believe that anything was possible. Weeks passed, and with each one, Emma grew more comfortable in her new life. The world outside the mansion seemed to fade into the background as she focused on the quiet stability she had found within these walls. It was a different kind of peace than she had ever known, one that wasn't filled with constant worry or the fear of losing everything. Every morning, she would wake early and take a walk through the garden, letting the crisp morning air fill her lungs, grounding her in the present moment. It was a routine she had come to cherish, a moment of stillness before the day began. One evening, as she stood by the window in the sitting room, watching the sun set behind the distant hills, Alexander entered the room. She turned to him, a smile playing on her lips. "I didn't expect to see you tonight," she said softly. He smiled back, his eyes warm. "I could say the same about you," he replied. "You've become quite the artist." Emma felt a flush rise in her cheeks at his words. "It's been a long time since I've really done something just for me," she said, her voice a little uncertain. "But I'm starting to think that maybe I'm actually good at this." Alexander walked closer, his gaze thoughtful. "You are. I've seen the way your work has evolved. You're not just painting, you're telling a story with each brushstroke." Emma's heart fluttered a little at his praise. She wasn't used to hearing such words, not from someone like him. He wasn't just any man. He was successful, respected, and had a life that seemed perfect. Yet here he was, taking the time to acknowledge something as simple as her painting. "I've been thinking," she began, her words slower now, "about what you said the other day, about finding my own path. I want to do something with my art. Maybe I can start selling it. Maybe even open a small gallery." Alexander nodded, his expression encouraging. "I think that's a wonderful idea," he said. "You have something special, Emma. Don't hold back because you're afraid. The world deserves to see it." His words meant more than she could express. It was the kind of support she had always longed for, but never thought she would find. She had always thought she had to struggle alone, but now, with Alexander, she realized that she didn't have to. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. I don't think I could have done this without you." Alexander gave a small smile, a hint of something deeper in his eyes. "You could have, Emma," he said. "But I'm glad I could be here to help you find your way." There was something in the way he said it that made her feel both seen and understood. She had been lost for so long, but now, with him by her side, she felt like she was finally finding her way back. It wasn't just about the art or the gallery. It was about finding a place for herself in a world that once felt so uncertain. She had always been afraid of being vulnerable, of asking for help, but now, with Alexander, she realized that it was okay to let someone in. It was okay to trust. "I don't know what comes next," she said, her voice softer now, "but I feel ready to find out." Alexander stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You're ready, Emma. I believe in you." And for the first time in a long time, Emma believed in herself too. As Emma stood in front of the large canvas, the morning sunlight filtered through the windows, casting a soft glow over the studio. She had always found comfort in the rhythm of her brushstrokes, but today, something was different. There was a sense of urgency in her movements, a desire to capture something she could not yet define. It was as if the weight of everything that had happened, her past, her loss, her newfound hope, had finally given her the clarity she needed to pour her emotions onto the canvas. She had spent so long trying to make sense of her life, but now, in this moment, she realized that maybe the key wasn't in understanding everything, but in letting go. She was painting freely, without fear, without the need to control every stroke. Her mind drifted to the conversations she had shared with Alexander over the past few weeks. He had become more than just a person who offered her refuge. He had become her support, her sounding board, her quiet strength. He had given her the courage to explore parts of herself she had long hidden away. As the canvas slowly filled with color, Emma's thoughts shifted to the future. She had talked to Alexander about opening a gallery, about showing her work to the world. It felt like a dream, something she had once thought impossible. But now, it didn't seem so far-fetched. She had found a new sense of purpose, a reason to push forward, and it wasn't just about art. It was about reclaiming her life, her joy, and her freedom. The sound of footsteps interrupted her concentration, and she turned to see Alexander standing in the doorway, watching her with a small smile on his face. "You're quiet this morning," he said, his tone gentle. Emma wiped a bit of paint from her hands, giving him a small smile in return. "Just thinking," she said softly. "About everything." Alexander nodded, his expression thoughtful. "What are you thinking about?" "About where I am," Emma replied, turning back to the canvas. "About where I'm going." She paused for a moment before continuing. "I've been thinking about the gallery, about showing my work." Alexander stepped closer, his eyes never leaving her as he moved to stand beside her. "I think that's a great idea," he said sincerely. "I believe in you, Emma." She looked up at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. He had always believed in her, even when she hadn't believed in herself. It was a rare kind of support, one that made her feel like she could truly achieve anything. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He smiled softly, his expression warm. "You don't need to thank me. You've earned this." Emma took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words settle in her chest. She wasn't sure how everything would unfold, but she knew that she was no longer standing at the edge of her life, afraid to move. She had found the courage to take that first step, and it was a step towards something new, something real. As the day wore on, Emma continued to paint, each stroke becoming a little more confident, a little more sure. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she felt ready to face it. And with Alexander by her side, she felt like anything was possible. The evening of the charity gala arrived, and Emma felt a nervous excitement bubbling in her chest. She stood in front of the full-length mirror, adjusting the hem of the elegant dress Alexander had given her. It was the first time she had ever worn something so luxurious, and for a moment, she wondered if she belonged in this world. But then she remembered the feeling she had been carrying with her for weeks, the quiet strength, the newfound confidence that had grown with every brushstroke, with every conversation with Alexander. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She wasn't just the girl who had been left at the altar. She was someone who was finding her way, someone who was learning to embrace her own worth. As she stepped into the living room, Alexander turned to face her, his expression unreadable for a moment. But then, his eyes softened, and a small smile tugged at his lips. "You look beautiful," he said, his voice sincere. Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words, but she quickly pushed it aside. She didn't want to get too used to hearing compliments, not yet. She wasn't sure if she deserved them. "Thank you," she said quietly, trying to keep her voice steady. Alexander extended his arm to her. "Shall we?" he asked, and Emma nodded, taking his arm as they made their way to the event. The gala was being held in a grand ballroom, the soft sound of classical music floating through the air as guests mingled, dressed in their finest attire. Emma felt a pang of insecurity as she entered the room. She was surrounded by people who seemed so polished, so confident, and she couldn't help but wonder if she was out of place. But as the night went on, something shifted. Alexander, ever the graceful host, introduced her to several people, and she was surprised by how easily she was able to converse with them. She shared stories about her art, about her dreams, and she noticed that people listened. They didn't look at her as a charity case or someone who didn't belong. They saw her as she was, someone who had a story to tell, someone worth knowing. Alexander stayed close by her side the entire evening, occasionally whispering a quiet word of encouragement when he saw her falter. By the end of the night, Emma realized something important. She didn't need anyone's approval to feel worthy. She had already started to build her own worth from the inside out. As the event drew to a close, Alexander took her hand and led her outside into the cool night air. "You were amazing tonight," he said softly. "You belong here, Emma." She looked up at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I never thought I would hear those words," she said, her voice a little shaky. Alexander gave her a knowing smile. "I told you, you just needed to believe in yourself." They stood there for a moment, the cool breeze gently rustling the leaves around them. Emma felt a quiet peace settle over her. She wasn't where she had thought she would be a year ago. But in this moment, she knew that everything she had worked for, everything she had overcome, had led her to this point. She had found her place. And for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid of the future. It had been several months since Emma had first stepped into Alexander's world, and with each passing day, she had become more certain of the path she was on. The gallery she had dreamed of was no longer a distant fantasy. It was becoming a reality. Her paintings were being displayed, admired by people who had once seemed so far out of reach. She had never imagined her art would be appreciated in such a way, but as the opening night of her first solo exhibition drew closer, the excitement and nerve she had been feeling had become overwhelming. She stood in front of her latest piece, a large canvas that captured the quiet beauty of the garden where she had spent so many mornings. It was a piece of her, a piece of the journey she had been on. As she ran her fingers lightly over the edges of the painting, a soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Are you ready?" Alexander's voice came through the door, calm and steady as always. Emma took a deep breath before replying, "I think so." He entered the room, his usual confident stride slowing as he took in the sight of her standing there, looking at the painting. "This one's special," he said, his voice gentle. "It's a reflection of everything you've been through." Emma looked at him, her heart swelling. She hadn't realized it before, but the painting was more than just a piece of art. It was the story of her transformation, her healing, and the strength she had found. "Thank you for everything," she said quietly. Alexander stepped closer, his presence comforting. "You've done all the hard work," he said, his tone soft but firm. "You're the one who put in the effort to get here." Emma felt a wave of emotion wash over her. It wasn't just about the gallery or the paintings. It was about everything. How she had come so far from the girl who had been left at the altar, how she had found the courage to stand up and move forward. "I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted, her voice thick with emotion. Alexander smiled, his eyes warm. "You didn't need me to do it, Emma. You just needed someone who believed in you." She nodded, her heart full. She had learned so much from him, about resilience, about trusting herself, about opening her heart. And it wasn't just about the art or the gallery. It was about life, about love, and about the future. "Let's go," he said, offering his arm. "It's time." As they made their way to the event, Emma felt a sense of peace settle over her. She wasn't just stepping into a gallery full of strangers. She was stepping into the next chapter of her life. A chapter where she was no longer afraid of her dreams, no longer afraid of who she could become. The night went by in a blur of laughter, congratulations, and admiration for her work. Emma stood there, surrounded by people who saw her for who she was, not for her past. She had come so far. And as the night came to a close, with Alexander by her side, she realized that this was only the beginning. There was so much more ahead of her, so many more paintings to create, so many more dreams to chase. But for the first time, she knew she was ready for whatever came next.